right, welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Riff. I'm your host, Mo Saleh, and joining me today I have Mr. Jorge.
Hello.
And I got Mr. Apollo.
Hello.
Of the band Mimic. And it's the second time we do this.
That's right. Part two.
Fucking, the
sequel.
The sequel. So what's been happening with y'all guys lately, man? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about life for a little while.
Sure. Well, I just finished up, obviously, the recording of the EP. We were quite prodigious, I would say, with the output being that it was less than a year ago that we did the Bandcamp page, not even 12 months, and now we got 5 newer and, in my opinion, I think better produced and more consistent songs.
Yeah.
That to do so in such a relatively short period of time is, I just think, a testament to how hard we worked at it and how hyper I am from all the coffee I drink, and I think Apollo just being hyper in general. So,
got a lot of time and energy to do shit.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. I was wondering. I don't know. Maybe might have asked y'all this question last time I was here, but is it mainly like parts of songs that y'all just record, like a riff here and there, and then just like combine it, or y'all have like the whole song in mind of where y'all want to go? Because it just seems like
a bit of both.
A bit of both, okay.
Because the process for when we're making these songs and putting a beginning, middle, and end, we kind of make these songs as we go along.
Yeah.
But we have like a blueprint written out where, like, okay, we might want to have a clean ending to this song, or we want to have a climax at a point where, it's slow and then it goes fast again. So we kind of have that stuff ironed out. Mm-hmm. But all in all, it's just working on the song as we go along.
Yeah.
Just building the structure.
I remember y'all telling me it was like 6 months in the making.
Yeah, it was
for this particular one.
For the first track, Dominant Frequency, I came up with the first riff for it right after we finished the podcast here. Mm-hmm. So I guess ever since that day moving forward, it was just working hard and trying to iron out some riffs for the next release.
Right.
And it was more of the fire that, okay, the demo was good, we have these songs out, but I think we're capable of writing something better and maybe making more songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's pretty much how it went. It's just when we get together and it's like, okay, how about this riff? And if I think it sounds too much like a certain band, then I won't use it.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, no, that sounds too much like so-and-so. No. Or, if anything, try and mutate it and twist it around to where it doesn't sound like a certain band and use that. But there's a lot of dissonances on this album, just like with the other songs, a lot of flat fives, and even in some instances, sharp fives. A lot of what I call Alan Holdsworth chords, the jazz guitarist Alan Holdsworth, that I showed to Apollo and showed him like what to play like, play it like this. This is an inversion of, say, a major 7. This is an inversion of a dominant 7, flat 5, or what have you. And I'd show it to him, and he'd be like, oh, okay. And you throw a little overdrive on it stuff, a little distortion, and it just gives it a whole new life as opposed to it being completely clean.
Yeah. Did we talk about what tuning y'all in last time? Standard tuning, yeah. That's fucking amazing. Yeah, it is. There's not a lot of bands that do that, man. A lot of them either do drop tunings or they tune to a D standard or a D flat standard. And we decided to keep it in standard tuning because it's like, well, A, not a lot of bands do it. And B, it just... everything cuts through. It's a little cleaner, because you have, like now, you've had the 7-string guitars for a while. I got nothing against 7 strings. I mean, Trey from Morbid Angel is he's an absolute beast on the 7-string and whatnot. But now, with 8-string guitars where they have a low F sharp, I would think to myself, if I were a producer or an engineer, you'd really have to have the ears for that, because a low F sharp, man, that's a fifth below the low B. So you're talking about, and I mean, to EQ that and get it tight with drum, it's just like, nah, and also, too, to an extent, I'm somewhat of what you would call a quote-unquote traditionalist. I prefer 4-string basses to 5 or 6 or more.
I prefer 6-string guitars. I prefer standard tuning. I'm not adverse to playing in drop tunings, though. When I played with The Void and Built to Destroy, we tuned to drop A. So I played a 5-string with those bands. When I did shows with Exhorter, we tuned to D flat, but I used a 4-string for that. A couple shows I used Ibanez 5 I had at the time, which was the same one that I used with The Void and Built to Destroy. But I always come back to the 4-string, man. And I'm not to toot my own horn, but I can make a 4 sound like a 6. There's little ways you can do it. I can make the 4-string sound like a 6-string. I can make a fretted bass sound fretless. I mean, it's all in the hands and your touch and everything. And it's true, everything's in the hands. But at the end of the day, I'm somewhat a traditionalist. 4-string bass, 6-string guitar. You know, that's just me.
Yeah. Was it? I know, like, there's equal parts to this band, obviously, but were you sitting on a bunch of bass lines that you had previously written that kind of just like didn't make the cut for, you know, something else, some other project you were doing, and said, "Hey, Apollo, I got this waiting for us. Would this work?"
Believe it or not, no.
Wow, damn. So everything's just like fresh, cool.
Yeah. From scratch. At least a lot of the riffs from my end. I mean, there were some times that jamming with Speed in the room, because Speed is very adverse drummer. The dude could play anything. He could play jazz if he wants to, you know. And we've done some stuff like that. And you know, I always said to myself, even before I started the demo with Jorge, I'm like, all this stuff could really find its place. Of course, I love death metal. I like to play some, you know, heavy, evil-sounding riffs, but it'll be nice to branch out a little bit because I'm capable of stepping out the box a little bit, playing with some clean guitars. And lo and behold, it really found its place with Jorge.
You get to scratch that proverbial itch, you know, in other avenues, like with Mimic and you know, and like it's like Jorge was saying, you know, it's like he's introducing more jazz components.
Oh, absolutely, man. That's in my DNA ever since like my senior year in high school, when I got turned on to Alan Holdsworth and the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Love that band, by the way.
Oh, they're fantastic, man.
I only heard one record from Mahavishnu.
Oh, dude.
Trident Sessions?
The Trident Sessions is killer, but the Inner Mounting Flame.
The blue one is.
I think it's red.
It's kind of like a light red. The Trident. I have that on CD.
Okay.
The one you want to hear is the first one, Inner Mounting Flame, because on that one it's really heavy for the time period. I think 69 or 70, and the drummer they have on that album, Billy Cobham. I mean, and one of the songs toward the end, I mean, he's kicking double bass and almost doing thrash beats. And I mean,
that's cool.
Very intense music for its time. So between John McLaughlin, Mahavishnu, Alan Holdsworth, Steve Morse, and the Dixie Dregs,
Robert Fripp from King Crimson.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
some of his stuff borders progressive. Like
it really does.
Absolutely.
Dude, this is supposed to be a 70s band?
Absolutely. Those bands are very cutting edge for that time period.
I think I was around 19. I was just out of high school when I first heard about King Crimson, and I heard them both together at one of my buddy's house, man. And I was like, "Hey man, check this out! This is from 1974 or some shit."
Yeah, 21st century schizoid man.
And I was like, "What? Yeah. This existed?"
Yeah.
You know, at the time, being 19, 18 years old, I mean, as far as 70s got with me, it was Sabbath, it was Deep Purple, it was, you know, all the heavy anthem rock, you know, the precursor to metal years and shit like that.
Yeah, that's what intrigued me so much, or what I liked about, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, that's what I liked about those bands, was that they had the dynamics of a rock band, you know, distorted guitars, you know, heavy bass tones, you know, heavy drums and whatnot, but it was the aesthetics of jazz, because they were all jazz players. Same with John Zorn's project, Naked City, came out in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm familiar with Naked City or not, but John Zorn's this alto sax guy from New York who does all this avant-garde underground music, but he can also play traditional jazz as well. But he had an outfit called Naked City, which combined a hardcore punk melded with jazz, and the musicians would sit on stage. Oh, dude, you got to hear Naked City. Any of their stuff, man. Torture Garden, the self-titled, Radio, and the musicians would sit on stage, and he would conduct. and they would sight read as they were playing. And I mean, songs like, it could sound like rockabilly 1 minute, then shift right into hardcore punk, then go into like surf. And it's all the musicians playing that, because they're all musicians from the New York scene.
Okay.
Who, very popular guy in the New York scene, that they have a following there, guys like Bill Frisell and Wayne Horvitz. And, if anybody out there who is familiar with John Zorn and Naked City, they'll know what I'm talking about. And it's really stirring stuff, and it's just, it's you won't really hear anything like it. That's what, talking about my Vishnu and Crimson and Holsworth, and I'm not going to delve too much into it because we could get lost.
We got time, man.
Oh, well, that's what blew me away about Cynic's debut, Focus. I was like, aha! It's like they did it. Like, okay, they took the heaviness and then they blended in the fretless bass, the Chapman stick, they blended in the fusion-y stuff. And I was like, I get it. That's it. They did it. They created, So, but it would be a miss for me to say, yeah, I was trying to do something like that in like the late 80s, early 90s, and I kind of had glimpses of ideas of it, like how to go about it. I'm not saying like what I was trying to be into predated Focus, but I had the ideas in my head, but I wasn't good enough to execute them technically on the guitar, and I really didn't know where to go with it. So when I heard Focus, when it came out, I was like, I'm not even going to bother. They did it. It's like they did what I was trying to do.
They showed them up already.
Yeah. And they're Paul Masvidal and Jason Goebbels were way better guitar players than I could ever be. So I was like, I'll let them have it.
Well, that's really gracious of you to let them have it.
Yeah.
Let them keep the belt.
I'll let them keep it. I'm done. They did it.
Yeah.
Fuck me. Wait, can I say? Oh.
Yeah, you can cuss.
Oh, all right.
It's okay. I wish sometimes I had like video for instances like that, because he was like really sincere. He's like, I really messed up here.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that.
This isn't going to be broadcasted on TV.
No, I got a big,
damn
explicit warning for,
Nice.
So it's okay.
Disclaimers are good.
Oh yeah, I need them, especially for people like Apollo, because I just don't know where the conversation is going to go. We have some good conversations via social media. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Man, so speaking of Focus and saying, it would be amiss for me if I not mention, Apollo, you're a very busy man as of late. You have Mimic, you definitely got Heraclean, and y'all recently played the Southport show with Cynic.
Yeah.
Tell the audience about that. Tell me about that. How did it go?
It was a very humbling experience.
Yeah.
To see their whole aesthetic with approaching the stage is to give more or less. They're not trying to show off. It's not like a Yngwie Malmsteen concert where you got a guy making funky, faces on the guitar while he's squealing his solo. But
fretboard masturbator.
Yeah, exactly, as they would call it. But no, these dudes were intentional on giving the audience an experience, and it's. They could have. Cynic has all kinds of great material. They could have played anything from any of their later records, even their most recent one, Ascension Codes, which I was looking forward to maybe hearing a song or two from there. But to know that they had Max Phelps from Exist and Death to All on
killer vocalists and guitar players,
absolutely
all right.
Phenomenal and consistent. And what blew me away, aside from the fact that Cynic are just impeccable musicians and prodigies, it's the fact that Phelps went into in certain parts, Paul let him do some clean vocals. I'm like, this guy can't just fucking scream, he can sing.
Yeah,
he's got pipes. So it was just, like I said, it was a very humbling experience. Like I consider myself a decent musician, but when those dudes stepped on stage, they made a name for themselves that night, and like they do every night they play.
I would venture to say you're a lot more than just decent, Paulo. That's you're modest in that right there.
Yes, I like to view myself as decent.
But
same.
But I appreciate what you both bring to Mimic and as musicians, because that's something I know I can't pull off. Not right now. Not in that stage in the game. So it's just take the compliment. You're a lot better than decent, man.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah. Were you able to pick the brains of those musicians in Cynic and just kind of see get some tips of the trade?
I introduced him to Paul. I thought he had already met Paul, but he hadn't.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I didn't get to pick I got to talk to Max Phelps, and I'm like, dude, for my 17th birthday, I snuck into a Deaf to All show at the Best Buy Theater in Manhattan. He's like, oh, yeah, who were the bands that night? And I told him, I'm like, dude, it was Massacre, it was Obituary, and I think, Massacre, Obituary, and Exhumed.
Oh, wow.
Dude, it was a death metal phenom, you know? And he's like, oh, man, that was a while ago. When was that? Like 2014? I'm like, yeah, dude, it was my 17th birthday. I'll never forget it. That assured me that night that also this is the kind of stuff I want to do eventually if I have a band. I want to go on stage, play my heart out like that. And just the honor it must be to play in Chuck's place next to musicians that have played beside him for years and written music with him. And it's like, the dude was perfect for the role.
He really is. He really is.
There was no flaw. He put his heart into it. He even tried to move like Chuck, which Chuck doesn't like to move that much.
Yeah, he just real, stationary and just, just playing his heart out. And then when it comes time to belt out those guttural vocals or whatever the song called for.
Accuracy.
With accuracy. And he would just do it. I know, I was able to experience that that same presence of Max Phelps, and a couple of years back at the first Death. It was a Death and Chuck tribute show.
Yeah. Death Doll at House of Blues, right?
Yeah, I was at the Brass Mug in Tampa.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
And they played Spiritual Healing in its entirety, and then before that, they had Steve DiGiorgio, they had Max, and they had Shannon Ham, and just playing, some of the other works besides Spiritual Healing. And man, I was just blown away. I was closing my eyes, man. I was just like, dude, I hear Chuck. It just open my eyes and this is Max, but man, it's like the guy is on stage with the rest of the band for a fucking reason. Yeah, it's because he can nail it. He could do it.
Yeah.
He earned his role for that. But beyond that, I didn't get to pick their brain that much. They seem very busy. These guys have places to go, so I don't.
Yeah, it had to be in Atlanta, the next night.
I've been to Atlanta, and same. The traffic is fucking horrendous.
It is. I actually drove out there, going to Atlanta, as a matter of fact, to see. It was Psyopus, Gnostic, and Atheist, and I think I said this in the last podcast. I got to hang out with the Atheist guys on a tour bus with Kelly and Tony and Steve Flynn, and so I did the drive to Atlanta, and it was about 8 hours. And what was so funny was that I drove there, and the only thing I might have had to eat was maybe a few crackers and some water. By the time the whole show was done, I was on the tour bus for Atheist. Their bus was getting ready to leave. And I was like, maybe I can ride with these guys to the next city. And then I was like, who am I kidding? I got a rental car. I got to get it back. On the way back, somewhere between Mississippi and Alabama, I stopped in at a Waffle House. And I kid you not, when I probably ordered half the menu and waffles, pancakes, eggs, and I ate the entire thing. No one could believe it. They were like, oh, jeez, look at this dude.
How are you not diabetic?
The cooks hated him that night.
Dude, but I was so hungry. I was like, God, I gotta eat.
I would have went to a fucking diabetic coma after that shit.
Yeah, I can't do that. I can't do that anymore. But at the time, I was so famished. But I didn't realize it because I'm hanging out in a tour bus with one of my bass heroes.
Yeah. And,
watching Kelly and Tony talk and kind of go back and forth a little bit about at the time, the whole pestilence scenario. And it was just a trip, man. I'm kicking back, and Tony's letting me play on his bass, and I'm pinching myself like, dude, I'm playing Tony Choi's bass. And, and I started playing the intro to their song, Mother Man, and Kelly's like, dude, you're playing that wrong. I'm like, no, I'm not.
And he's telling him that he's playing his own song wrong.
Yeah. Right. And, and he's like, no, dude, it's this, dude. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what I'm playing. He's like, no, you're doing this. And I was like, I was like, oh, you know what? Okay. And then I
am doing it wrong.
It hit me afterwards. I'm like, wait a minute. What the hell? I'm trying to tell this dude, playing his own song. Like I'm playing it right when I'm playing. So it was a funny moment. And I had to kind of like catch myself.
Yeah.
Like, because that's how I learned it on the, honestly, Unquestionable does not have the best production. The bass is buried a lot, but the opening riff to the song Mother Man.
Says the bassist.
Yes, which it is, man. Poor Tony Choi, man. He never got a proper bass mix on anything except for the 91 Cynic demo and Atheist album, Elements, the third album. But that opening, the Mother Man, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, dude, that's the... So, hey, lesson learned, you know.
Right.
I'm not going to sit there and argue with the dude. It's like it's his song. He should know. I was like, oh, okay. And then I started playing Samba Breeze, and Tony's chuckling. He's like, He's like, put some soul in that, man. Don't play it like a white boy. Put some funk in that. Put some groove in it. Oh, yeah. I got you.
When Tony Choi tells you that, you better listen to him.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny, man.
Yeah. But he is a trip, man. That dude he's something else. He was telling me some old stories from back in the Atheist Club days and everything, and how crazy it was with the whole Florida scene, and with the Skins and everything, and with the lots of some tripped out stories, man, like fights and stuff that would go down and whatnot. Well, we had that here too in New Orleans, albeit not to such a degree.
Yeah. What was it like being in New Orleans as a young musician? You know, and it kind of finding your way in that scene, in the scene. Like,
it was very.
I think we touched on it last time I was here, but please refresh my memory.
Sure. Everyone was, at the time, it was very supportive. You know, you would have bands like go to Storyville Jazz Hall, which then later became Margaritaville, which then later became something else. Now it's completely shut down now. It was we would go there to shows. Exhorter was more or less the house band there forever. And everybody pitched in and helped, man. You know, Exhorter would do shows with Crowbar. Crowbar would do shows with Paralysis. People helped out, word of mouth, you know, seeing flyers passed out, people going from show to show. And me, being a guitarist at the time, and just going to see all these shows, especially like see Soylent Green's first show and everything, and just being like, wow, man, you know, and everybody just wanting to play guitar, play bass, or play drums. Everybody wanted to be in a band. Because at the time, in Vinny LaBella, ex-Exhorter guitarists will say the same thing. Yeah, that's when we had a scene. And it really was, man. Crowbar, Soylent Green, Paralysis, Exhorter, you know, another band called New Religion, from which Scott Williams, who...
The bassist first.
Who went to Soylent Green after Marcel, Incubus. So, yeah, I mean, it was very healthy, very thriving. And... so it was a lot of fun, and that's just how I got to know people. And then when I moved out to Metairie in '94, I was going out, like, I lived in Fat City, and there was Last Stop in Dino's Rock Box. I went out to Last Stop just like, well, I'm around a corner from it. Let me go check it out. And I walk in, and there's Vinny LaBella, and Vinny with his friends. There's Kyle Thomas. I'm like, whoa. And then I walked up, and I'm like, what's up, dude? And they're like, George, yeah, what's up, man? And I was like, man, I live up the street now, you know, I just moved in from Araby. And they're like, hey, oh, yeah, you know, come hang out. And I was like, yeah, here we go, you know. Yeah. So it was a fantastic time.
I had a very recent and similar experience. I went to, what's the bar they had Jennifer Attaway's birthday party at? It was, anyway, but my point is that I go
Pat's Pub.
Pat's Pub, thank you, Pat's Pub. And I think it was the last Saints game that was playing. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of people there. I think you were there. Yeah, you were there. Yeah, because you just be to the couple that you would
Jason and Linda.
Jason and Linda, yes, yeah. Fantastic people, by the way.
Absolutely.
And so you were there. Well, this is the scene I'm going to paint for the audience, but you know, it's very traditional New Orleans-y Irish pub type of venue, and Vinny LaBella, he's just hanging out, and nice. You know, me and Ben Fogwood's hanging over there, and Ben introduces me to Vinny, and dude, it was like, hey man, you need to come out, just come out more, you know, we're gonna do this thing. It just felt like home, you know, it just felt like, you know, I hate to to compare it, but it felt like I was on an episode of Cheers, because like everyone knew who I was. I knew everyone that was there. It was great.
It's a homey atmosphere.
Very much so.
It really is. And the
a piece of the scene everywhere too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, man.
A little bit of punk in there,
Punk,
the old school metal.
Yeah, they
thrash
had
metal.
that too because it was Jin's birthday. So you had, a couple of the pallbearer people there,
Yeah.
who they
Yep.
never venture out to Metairie, but Bill's brother Richie, the singer, and Severin, the guitarist, they were there. I got Jin a couple bass books as a birthday present that I no longer use because pretty much whatever I have in my. I knew this as because her last birthday, I'd given her a couple bass method books.
Uh-huh.
Then I gave her a couple more. One was like a warm-up book with different finger exercises, and another one was just like something for 101 bass tips. And it's like, look, I know, happy birthday. She's like, oh, and she was very appreciative because she's a hell of a bass player. And like with anything, whatever you do in life, you don't want to regress, you want to progress. So
I know. That's where I'm at right now. I went buy me another guitar book. That's pretty much to strengthen up some theory and chord progression and everything like that. Because I don't want to regress. That's for sure. Like like you said, I want to progress with the instrument and just get to be more well-rounded. Just not to play power chords and play metal and tremolo pick single notes and things like that.
Of course.
I like to branch out and get a little bit more well-rounded.
And here's a tip to do so, and to save, if you want to save yourself a few bucks, email me questions about all that and I'll answer them.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm serious because Jim would always come up to me and ask me, theory, right? Do you teach theory? And I've had other people ask me, yeah, I can teach it, but, I'd rather just send me an email like, hey, what about... So, Mo, I'm putting this out to you.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it's any theory questions you may have. Dude, shoot me an email, a Facebook, whatever.
Okay.
Dude, I'd be more than happy to answer
I appreciate that, man.
Actually, to be quite frank, I love doing that. Like, it's almost... I could sit there all day and answer theory questions. Like, oh, this is great. It's just the way my brain works.
Yeah.
And, and for the most part, being that I'm self-taught as well, but I can answer questions about scales and arpeggios and modulation. And inversions. I'll answer that all day.
I still cannot. I cannot appreciate anything. Like, I mean, if I'm on like an E minor, I can do that, no problem. But or like the cowboy chords, and I'll just arpeggiate that. But when it comes to like just fucking doing shit like you do on stage, where you like just sweeping
Picking out the notes.
Yeah, and I'm like, I can't do that. No,
It's all in the right hand, man.
Yeah, I know.
Well, confession here, I don't know jack about theory. The closest I've gone to actually learning music in thinking about music in a theoretical point of view is my jazz class in high school, where like I was playing for Jorge the other day. I was playing Paul Brubeck.
Dave Brubeck.
Dave Brubeck. Was it Take Five?
Yeah.
Yes.
Take
Oh, I
Five.
love that song.
And I didn't know that. I'm sitting there, I'm editing something we had just recorded. I'm hearing, I'm like, I was like, dude, does that Take Five? Like, wait a minute, how the hell?
And Jorge's like, you know how to play Take
I'm
Five, but you don't know your
fretboard.
names.
I'm flummoxed. I'm like, wait.
Great word.
You know how to play Take Five, but you don't know the note. What?
Because my jazz teacher forced me to learn it because we were going to go on stage in the auditorium in like 20 minutes. He's like, you got 20 minutes to learn this song.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, put the song on. And I just started to listen out the notes. I'm like, okay,
and
I got it.
It tripped me out. I couldn't believe it because I was like, okay. I'm like, wait a minute. Because I would chide him about, I'd say, okay, so it's C, D, E, and he'd be like, I'm like, C, D, like pointing it out to him. And then I hear him playing.
Like a 6-year-old child. He's pointing beyond the
I'm pointing at the
fretboard.
fretboard. And then I hear him playing Take Five, and my brain can't comprehend it.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you're playing jazz, but you don't know the... Because I think what it is with my brain, it compartmentalizes everything.
Well, you're a man because that's what we do.
Oh, so that's what it is. So in my mind, it's like, wait, you're
That's
playing...
no knock on women. I'm sorry.
So it's like, wait, you're playing jazz, but you don't know. So anyway, I got a kick out of that. I was like, man, that's really cool. And on the new Mimic, especially on the last song, Sleepers, he got to indulge a little bit of that where we do like a call and response kind of thing where he does this little jazzy bit, then I come in with my part before it goes back into the harmonics.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, nobody's doing this. Nobody locally, that's for sure. And it was just something that, I wanted to explore, like, get a little mellow in this song, just and have those parts contrast,
Speaking of the songs, I mean, would y'all be willing to kind of give us break down some of the songs?
Absolutely.
Chronomancer, man. I was telling y'all both that's one of my favorite songs on that EP.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And what I like to know, and I think if anyone's out there, I like to, if y'all want to deconstruct the song part, if
for sure,
just give me what the what was the mindset going into that one?
Going into it, it's funny you say mindset, because the name of the CD is Hive Mind. And
see what I did there? That was my accident.
And it revolves around, for the most part, it's based around AI. And ironically enough, the cover artwork is AI. And but just how AI is just becoming such a big factor in everything, technology, music, whatever. AI is starting to play a big part in a lot of stuff. And the songs reflect that, but I'll let Apollo extrapolate on that, because he's the lyric writer.
There's a bit of a backstory behind it. It's conceptual, and it's based on the singularity, the idea of what if technology got out of our hands and it became strong enough to control us.
Right.
That's pretty much where
I think we're almost there.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part.
Well, then that's what, going into what we would have written about, because a lot of, we were approaching more of like a tech kind of, sci-fi sounding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, there's a lot of stuff going on now. Like, let's talk about technology. Let's talk about the AI takeover, how we're being so dependent on robots to do our crap.
I've seen how this plays out. I've seen fucking Terminator, Skynet, man.
Yeah, exactly, Skynet. Dude. Skynet is very real.
Oh yeah.
And AI, the automated, has already replaced workers in like fast food places and supermarkets, around the country. Because you remember when people were clamoring for that $15 an hour, and those 7-figure making CEOs were like, no, we'll just replace y'all with
touch screens.
With touch screens
to order your food.
Yeah, and we'll save ourselves a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And you're out of a job.
I know. I was. I think I first used one when I was in Oslo, and they had maybe 2 people working the register, and you could tell the registers were set up for like maybe 5 or 6 cashiers, and they only had 2, and then but then they had the big old touch screens, and I was like, yeah, this is sad. But I'm gonna order. This is more efficient. I'm gonna get my double quarter pounder.
And it would probably be made correctly.
In Oslo, too.
Yeah.
I know that stuff like that is all over Japan, because it's, that's where most of that stuff comes from. Mm-hmm. But, dude, it's scary. We don't know what could happen. Maybe some good things can come out of it. But basically, the mindset that we were going to writing this EP was, what if it created a dystopia for us? Dominant Frequency is about how AI is taking over. It's we're implementing it in our life. One of the lyrics I have in there is called the opening lyric. I say augmentations of the brain, perfection found where science reigns. I think that
is a cool line.
It speaks for itself, because people are doing all kinds of things to themselves. They're modifying their looks. They're putting microchips and all kinds of weird stuff.
On a personal level, Apollo, I have to ask, is this like the AI thing? Does that kind of keep you up at night?
Yeah, it does. It kind of does, dude. I'm not going to lie, a little confession. Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a conspiracy theorist. I'm not somebody who has a tinfoil hat in my closet, but it makes me wonder. I like to listen. I listen to everybody's point of view. Even sometimes I pass through videos on YouTube where it's an hour of a preacher just saying, doing his thing, Bible scriptures, hollering about God. Sometimes I sit there and listen to it just to get a point of view. I'm a very neutral person. I don't lean towards any side at all. It's kind of like what I said for the last podcast. I go about that, way in my lyrics, with the way I write, the way I go around presenting myself.
Now you mention it, it's I guess I may favor the existence of spirituality of all things. I mean,
that's valid.
I'm really open, guy, and I'm willing to believe. I'm willing to see everyone's points of view. Right. But when it comes to, and we probably get off topic here, but I made, I got help making one of my most controversial merchandising items, which you could get through through Patrick Merchmack's promo store, and the new website, by the way, talesandrift.org. Anyway, and it challenges that. It's an Ambrose Bierce quote that says, Nick, religion is the daughter of hope and fear. And oh yeah, it's a brilliant quote, and when I think about religion as a whole, it's like it was man-made, first and foremost. I don't think you have to be religious per se to be a good person.
Completely agree.
So I guess I don't go about it like this, but some people would say it's very atheistic to believe that religion is man-made. But where did it come from? Well, it was word to mouth from the divine. Well, that's hearsay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But not to get too far into that here. Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah, and that's pretty much.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at on that. And in the second song that I really, really have a passion about for this particular EP that y'all made is Familiars. Familiars is just it's like once the first track was done, it's like it takes on another direction. And I'm pretty sure that was all intentional on y'all behalf to put them in a certain specific order.
Yeah, the running order was definitely that was definitely intentional with the running order. But just to backtrack slightly,
go ahead.
Let him explain Chronomancer to you, because I know you originally brought that up.
Well, yeah. So basically, it's 4 out of the 5 songs are the concept about AI. Familiars is about how we're using technology to do a lot of what you would call abominations to science, like people are trying to clone themselves, and Familiars is about how that can be successful. And you take the best of the best, people who are very loyal, very, conformists, I guess is the word to use.
Yeah, easy to control.
Easy to control, very subservient.
Very complicit.
Yeah, exactly, complicit. And then you grab those kind of people, clone them, and then you have a perfect society where everybody listens, and everybody's controlled.
Brave New World.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Hive Mind, which is just an instrumental. And then Sleepers, basically how it's the ending to the storyline where all that becomes eventually successful and the machines are top of the food chain.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely a concept that it does worry me. AI, for better or worse, it could be the most beautiful thing ever, or it could be the worst. It could be the downfall of humans.
Yeah.
It's fucking And hopefully it doesn't happen in my kids this time.
Right, because it's still too early to tell which way it could go. It could be either be extremely beneficial to humankind, or it could be extremely detrimental. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But dude, if there was ever like a real Skynet kind of a thing and like AI, and oh man, that I can't even fathom that. But it's
I would trust that we would know what to do with it.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, of course.
But the trick is not to let any kind of machine become that self-aware.
Right.
Because if it becomes that self-aware, then it's all downhill.
It's going to be someone like, Bezos or Elon Musk or even a Bill Gates.
I'm putting my money on Elon.
Yeah.
Dude is a robot.
Dude is something else. Man, build a rocket and everything. I have nothing but admiration for the guy. But yeah, you're right. There's no telling. But you can use obviously AI as for benefit as well. Because I use Chat GPT if I have a question about something.
Yeah, explain to him about that. How scary that is.
Yeah, well, Chat GTP or GPT is it's an AI. like software. Well, you can go to it online. You don't have to download it or anything, and you can put questions in, and it'll give you answers. Like if you say something like, "Give me an example of a really good resume," and it'll pop up like, "Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this." And so I would put in things like when it came to improving my production, especially for the CP on how to do stuff. Okay, hey chat, how do I make the drums punchier? And it'll tell you everything. How do I make a really good electronic press kit for our upcoming eventual website? And it'll generate a response, and I'm sitting there like,
or write me a poem, or write me a song about this or that,
yes,
and then it'll give you lyrics.
Wow.
We did that in stereo. Yeah, it'll give you lyrics. I'm just sitting there like, I was like, wow. And so then I decided to put a question in. I put a chat. Why are girls so moody and messed up in the head at times? And then it'll come back with,
because you didn't give them coffee.
Yeah. And it'll come back with, that's not a question. It's something about it was considered like a degrading question, so ChatGPT wouldn't comment.
Oh yeah,
on
it wouldn't answer the question.
It wouldn't answer the question. And Apollo said, "Hey, ask it. How does it feel to know that you would be? How did you put it? You said, ask it. How would it feel? How does it feel to know that
you're just
You were going to say, hey, why don't you ask it there? What was the question?
I was trying to ask it a question of its self-awareness.
Oh.
I said, how does it feel to be a computer that's built by humans and without the intention of free will? And then it said, like, my purpose is, such and such, and I don't have the intention of free will because it's not in my programming.
Oh, wow.
Very generic.
Yeah. It reminds me of Raised by Wolves on HBO Max.
I haven't seen that.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's it's some droids that are responsible for the last humans in existence.
Oh.
And it's placed in the future. I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but man, definitely check that shit out.
Very cool. I will.
Yeah, man. Like, it's written by Ridley Scott.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I have to watch.
You gotta watch this.
I have to.
And like me, Ben and I is always talking about that. Like dude, everything Ridley Scott. It's just kind of where our minds go in Star Wars too.
Because Ridley Scott likes to, even though his concepts are kind of the same there, in life and sci-fi, he likes to.
He definitely pushes the envelope when about faith, religion.
Yeah.
Everything like that.
He adds all
he did
stuff
that with
in.
Prometheus.
Oh, yes.
You watched the movie.
Heavily.
Yeah. My friend, I got a friend of mine, this dude Lewis, who lives out on the West Coast, lives in Hollywood, used to live here, and he's a jazz drummer, loves Mimic.
Shout out to Lewis.
Him. Yeah. He'll be listening to this. He's chatted with Apollo a few times. Chatted with Apollo a few times. And anyway, we went and saw Prometheus before we moved out to and that's all we talked about because obviously we're big fans of the Alien franchise, or at least the first two anyway. And if you notice in Prometheus, he did that. He kind of subtly weaved in the religious concept in that, it was Christmas time when they were doing everything with the Christmas tree. Supposed to be Christ's birth. Then you find out that the engineers were going back to Earth to drop those chemical
bombs.
Those bombs, the chemical. Yeah, I guess to transform people into xenomorphs or whatever, because apparently the implication, although never outrightly said, of course, was that maybe Jesus was one of the engineers, and of course, crucified, all that, so they've gone back to get their revenge. So so it's real how he weaved that in, especially with the opening scene when you see the engineer drinking that goo, and creating light, like almost like it's a mission thing, and you see the guy
like he was like the messiah of that particular cult of engineers.
Yeah, he sacrificed
himself for the greater good.
Yeah, and if you watch the deleted scenes, you see the elders hand it to him, and they have those robes on. Like what supposedly the apostles wore. Those cloaks, those garments, and they hand it to him, and like he sacrificed himself for the greater good. Mm-hmm. So the way Ridley Scott weaved in the whole, ancient astronaut theory, with the Christmas tale, and weaved it all around a a movie. It was really clever. I like the
man's a fucking genius. There.
Yeah, it really was awesome.
If there is like, a few people that I love to like just have like like a spot of tea with, it'd be really Scott. Just fucking pick
him
his
and
brain.
H.R. Geiger.
Man.
But interesting. I'll just bring this up about Prometheus. I'm sure people have noticed it, but the engineers look like Greek sculptures.
They do.
Like
I noticed that right away.
Those dudes are shredded,
and that sent chills down my spine. I mean, I'm just like, what if they kind of look like that?
You should get jacked up, dude, like that, and shave your head bald and just paint yourself
paint
white.
My skin bright white.
Halloween's coming up, bro. You got time.
I don't know if he could get his abs like that, because in 300 a lot of that
steroids for sure.
Steroids and CrossFit, baby. Let's go.
Because those dudes in Prometheus I was looking at them like, my God, those dudes are shredded. Those engineers,
And I think it was only a couple dudes that they put, and they kind of did some AI changes.
Oh yeah. I mean,
because
you can't go around having 16 abs, man. Come on.
That was the same with 300. I thought it was like they just followed a strict diet regimen. They did to an extent, but some of that was like CGI nails with 300.
100%.
And I was looking at it, I'm like, man, like, geez, and so yeah, it's funny Apollo mentioned that, because we noticed that too. Like, man, those dudes are ripped.
Yeah.
Like, look at them.
Interesting enough, I'll just touch on this real quick. In ancient
You're going to touch on it real quick.
Pun intended.
Couldn't help myself.
The Spartans in the 300 army, or in ancient Greece, like, they were cut, but like they had no food. They were always hungry. They would subject themselves to a small meal every day.
Yeah.
And they would fight for hours.
Oh, yeah. They would just, they'd make a living of just fighting motherfuckers. And just
these dudes weren't like chunky buff. Like,
no.
They were skinny. They were skinny, but they were cut.
Fight to the burger, too.
Yeah.
As they say in Fight Club. No one talks about Fight Club.
Yeah, that's one of the first rules.
That's the first rule.
It's one of the first rules, baby.
That's right.
So, shifting back to Mimic and music, what is the goal
with me?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, if you can ask what the goal was, with me it was just my friend Lewis had asked me the same thing. What's the point of it? He was curious. I said, for me, it's people who, especially if they're New Orleans people, who, if you like the quote unquote New Orleans scene, the bands on the scene, the heavy bands, whatever. If you like that kind of music, well, here's something that it's heavy, but it's different. Maybe a bit more avant-garde, a bit more cerebral, kind of offering the average New Orleans metal fan an alternative to, pretty much what tends to dominate the scene, which is, of course, the doomy, quote-unquote sludge, wherever that term came from. I really don't care for that term, but like the whole...
Yeah, I remember we hit on that the first time. Yeah. We don't need to give it much...
Yeah, no, but the doomy sound, the drop tune guitars and everything. And it's like, well, you like that? Cool. Here's something that, it may not be quite as heavy as that, but it's more cerebral, a bit more avant-garde. It takes chances. And, if you like that, then, hopefully you'll like this. It's just giving the audience out there something a little different.
Yeah.
But at the same time, coming from, NOLA or New Orleans or whatever,
which is the home of jazz.
Yeah.
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 Like that's a big thing down here. And we have some jazz fusion elements in there.
Absolutely.
Totally.
So it's like, why not add that in there?
Right.
And branch out a little bit.
Yeah, and I can't think of any other band locally doing what we do. That's not to denigrate other bands, obviously not. But there isn't. There is no band writing what we write, playing the way we play. And another thing, too, is we're very conscious of how the songs are very structured in a, this might sound like a dirty word to say, in a pop format, but it's very structured, what they call A-B format, verse, chorus. And because that's what really makes a song. That is what, I'm going to digress here slightly, that's what made, that's how Morbid Angel were able to sell so many albums when Covenant came out, because I think it was Columbia when they bought out Earache, and they tried marketing Carcass and Entombed and Napalm and Godflesh to the more mainstream MTV Headbangers Ball crowd. They couldn't make any headway with it, whereas Morbid went in the opposite direction. They didn't go with Columbia. They went with a subsidiary called Giant Records, headed, which was a subsidiary of the label name escapes me, but the head of the label is Irving Azoff, who's like the manager, like owns a record label that he manages Madonna and like these huge big name pop artists, and that's why Morbid Angel, they outsold all the bands that were originally on the Earache roster. They outsold everybody. But not only did they have MTV helping push Rapture and God of Emptiness, but the songs were straight. They were catchy. They were to the point, verse, chorus. And that album really helped them to take off, where everyone else, Napalm, Carcass, and all that kind of just fell in the wake. And as
they were pushed off. They were pushed off because people didn't understand it
right.
at the time.
At least not in the States.
Yeah, because I mean, for people thinking that, especially when Headbangers Ball was big, which we all watched every weekend.
Oh yes.
When they would have here's from the pit or whatever, and then they would play the more underground stuff. Maybe a lot of fans who maybe liked, say, Anthrax or Slayer or Metallica, maybe their ears just couldn't wrap around Napalm or Carcass or Godflesh.
Because that's what Albert, who runs Decibel, was saying.
Yeah,
he was saying that in the Chuck Schuldiner documentary. It's like whenever he was so accustomed to hearing Injustice for All, and whatever else he was listening to at the time, he was like, when he first heard Death, he was like, what the fuck is this? He just couldn't wrap his hand around it. It was too abrasive. It was too at the time, he thought it was just kind of like, I can't deal with it. So, but then they started warming up to it, with the later works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scream Bloody Gore is just a great album. It's just so raw and brutal, man. It just punches you in the face. And the fact that Chuck, with the exception of drums, wrote the riffs for all the instruments and played the bass. And yeah, I mean, what a visionary.
Mm-hmm. And like I said it before, it's bands that, like Atheist, Cynic, Watchtower, bands like that also can remind even the listener that cannot stand that abrasiveness about the music. But then it cuts into these fusion parts, and it's like, hold on a second. Maybe these guys know how to play their instruments.
Absolutely.
This stuff it would be some people would be like, oh, that's noise, that's garbage. Like, well, to you it might be, but that person's actually doing something on the instrument that requires skill to do, and not many people can pull off.
Agreed.
So say what you will about that.
Right.
Agreed. When I first heard Dillinger Escape Plan, I was completely blown away and tried playing it for people, and they just couldn't get it. Dude, that's noise. The dudes are just screaming. The guitars are just wanking, whatever. I'm like, no. Like, listen to what these dudes are doing. There's structure to it. These guys are incredible. Listen to what they're doing. And Dillinger was one of those bands, either you got it or you didn't, or you liked it or you didn't. And I tried turning people onto it, and they were just like, I don't know. I'm like, listen to these dudes. And so, Apollo's right on that. You really have to, these guys know their instrument. Even if they're self-taught, they know what they're doing. They're structured on what they're doing.
I have a similar story about botch. I was trying to get people to turn people on to botch for the longest time. In fact, I still am. Like, people who come on the podcast in the first few episodes, I was like, you ever heard of botch? And they're like, no. I was like, dude, come on.
We are the Romans.
We are the Romans. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Botch.
But yeah, we are the Romans. Fucking, they do this sick fucking cover of Black Sabbath's The Wizard. That stays on my YouTube subscription all the the time. It's just fucking amazing.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Are they like animals as leaders, kind of?
No.
Botch, no.
Nothing like that. It's just fucking just. They arguably created the whole math metal genre. They won't take the credit for it, but everyone pins it on them.
Okay.
But it's if it kind of falls into that same regime of like a Dillinger or Burnt by the Sun, stuff like that.
I have their first couple albums, Burnt by the Sun. I like Dave Whitty. He's a really good drummer. Stuff he did with Human Remains, who I got Apollo into, like, man, check out Human Remains, man. They do their riffs with the volume knob.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
It was the only way I could describe it, if anybody for the audience at home, if anybody knows Cryptopsy,
Yeah.
it's like if Cryptopsy was cleaner and more refined. And like Jorge was saying, like he was doing stuff with his volume knobs, where it's like when you're going to do a bend, it comes in and it gets that like violin sound, and he was doing it at a inhuman pace.
There's live footage of them on YouTube,
and
they show him doing that, playing live shows.
And our manager Bobby, when I put them on in the van when we were on the way to one of our shows, he's like, are they using a pedal? I think it was the Goat Horse show. Are they using a pedal? I'm like, I don't know. We'll ask Sammy. But Jorge said that they're using the volume knob. And come to find out, Sammy actually saw them live. And Bobby's like, yeah, all that stuff sounds like a pedal. And Sammy's like, no, man. Like, they're actually using... They actually do all that stuff live.
With the volume knob.
With the volume
knob.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I can never use it that fat.
Yeah. Eddie Van Halen was the first, man. He did it on a song called Cathedral on the Diver Down album. He used a volume knob, and then he set an echo and did a whole melody like that, a whole piece with just the volume knob and some echo.
Sick.
Yeah, he just
great album too.
Yeah, it is. It is a good album.
I'll pay attention to that. I don't recognize
it. Grew. Diver Down grew on me. But yeah, so Eddie, I don't know if the Human Remains guys got it from Eddie, but he was the first. That was the first where I heard it done like that, to where he composed literally an entire song just with an echo and just the volume knob.
We're on the topic of talking about albums, which I'm curious of what type of music y'all. What albums in particular, if you could name any or remember any, like puts you in that mindset to write the latest EP, if anything.
For me, it was, for me, I think it was just a collective thing. Like when you asked me earlier, like, did I have the bass riff set aside or whatever? And I was like, no, it was pretty much all fresh. But for me, it was anything Voivod or Cynic related, or, Atheist, Zappa, Crimsonish, even maybe a little bit to an extent, some Don Caballero, if anyone knows it. Just stuff that's a little bit off the beaten path, something that's not too readily obvious. That's what got me doing. But plus two was working with inverted chords and trying to find these really nice voicings, and like, well, man, this this add 11 chord, I don't really get any bands doing something like this, and then just trying to show it to Apollo, structure it, put it all together to where it comes out sounding like music and not just an exercise. So I would say for me it was Holsworth, Voivod, some Zappa, maybe a little Don Cab, and Cynic.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was listening to a lot of Zappa. That's why one of our there's the photo at the back of the EP is Jorge in a Cynic shirt, and I'm wearing a Zappa shirt. Mm-hmm. That dude's, like I said in 2 previous podcasts, he's one of my favorite guitarists. I don't really know. He doesn't consider himself a guitarist, and nobody really knows what he's doing on the guitar half of the time. But I'd like to think that if I were to do any kind of leads or anything, I would like to approach it more like Zappa, kind of put some Gilmour melody in it and Blackmore melody. I mean, those 2 guys, I love those guitarists. But it was also a lot of King Crimson that I was like, because the only record I knew was their first one, In the Court of the Crimson.
Yeah.
Great album.
Yeah, great album.
Great album, but I thought that was one of their only few records. I didn't know that they had a whole other
discography. They got a shit ton.
Dude, and I branched off into a lot of their stuff, and I'm just like, this is insane. Like, you could say that it's what do they consider themselves? Progressive rock?
They just consider themselves a rock band.
Yeah.
But they touch on so many different things, like
the articulation, the notes that he's playing. He's running diminished scales with an orchestra behind him.
I was actually listening to In the Court of the in the Wake of Poseidon on the way here. I love that fucking song. Yes. If there's like any song that I want played at my funeral, it's that motherfucking song. It just gives me a certain vibe. It gives me a certain feeling. Dude, I mean, you could just lump King Crimson as a prog band.
Absolutely.
But
they have full on fucking little mini operas within the songs, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's just brilliant. I mean,
Robert Fripp is a maniac, and
he is.
And I don't think a lot of people will notice, but he actually uses an altitude on his guitar. His guitar is tuned in perfect fourths, meaning instead of E-A-D-G-B-E, it's E-A-D-G-C-F. And not to mention, of course, his alternate pick in his right hand is so precise, like a metronome. Like one of my favorite King Crimson albums is Discipline, which has Adrian Belew on it.
Yeah.
And it's got that song on
That is one of my favorites.
Elephant
too,
Talk,
and
that intro to Frame by Frame, that's guitar, man. It's like you just hear that, and it's so precise. And I was thinking of touring. I can play that intro on bass, like that, and I might in the future might do a video of me playing the intro to Frame by Frame, because it's not easy to be that clean and that articulate with fingers.
Right.
But I, with the way I am and as hyper as I am, and I can't sit still, I'd make it work. Because yeah.
And I feel like that's the kind of the approach. Also with branching out a little bit, like the demo that we did recently, which had some riffs that Jorge was sitting on for some years.
Yeah, that is true. A few of those songs were riffs I had sitting around for a few years. And the way, and I don't know if I mentioned, maybe I did mention this in the last podcast, but the way Apollo got involved was we were just talking, and I said, yeah, man, I have some riffs I just never really did anything with. And he's like, oh, dude, I'll help you finish them. And I thought, oh, how nice of him. So yeah, we came in, and whereas with these,
everything was fresh.
Yeah.
Everything was just build as we go along.
Yes.
Let's make songs.
Yeah.
Just make them.
And literally some were right on the spot. Like, ooh, what about this? Oh, that's cool. Let's try recording it. Literally, like, boom, 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 right up to, yeah.
I gotta ask a question to you, Jorge. Is since y'all started working together, have you noticed like more progression in his playing?
A little. I know he's got the ability to really push himself with the, because sometimes I'll hear stuff in my head like, and I'm like, I know he can't technically do that, but if he could, so no, I don't.
And I'm not a shredder,
Yeah, and
I would always tell people I'm a rhythm guitarist. I'm not a shredder.
Yeah, so I kind of had to push him with the like the riff on Familiars, that Watchtower. I had to push him on that.
Yeah.
I would scream.
Oh, yeah, he'd be like,
and holler.
Oh yeah, fuck! And I'd be like, okay, dude, calm down. Try it again. And finally, he got it. And
it's just like it's out of the bounds of what I'm used to, but it's something that within my soul, it's something that I want to replicate.
And that's how you get good. You push yourself.
You push yourself, and it's like a necessary evil. When they're having someone who knows you can do it, you know your capabilities. It's like we're only limiting ourselves in that moment.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, because I'm ready for him. I'm gonna come over one day. I'm ready for him to be like, oh, dude, check this out. And I'll just be like, whoa, what? So because I would tell him like, okay, dude, practice, learn your neck, learn the notes in your neck, and just keep practicing your alternate picking. But it's easy for me to say because I was telling him this, and what a lot of people may not realize who are younger is that in the 80s, especially mid to late 80s, you had to be good. Like shredding was almost like obligatory.
Oh, yeah.
I was telling him that back in that era, I mean, you had your Jason Becker, you had
Vinnie
Moore, Tony McAlpine, Steve Vai. Like if you couldn't play like that, people thought you sucked. If you couldn't try, like you can't play, you suck.
Yeah.
And I was telling him that obviously this was way before social media and cell phones. All you did, me especially, you sat and you wanted to learn this stuff. You had to be good, so you had to learn it. There were no distractions.
Yeah.
You didn't have, YouTube. And
you didn't have YouTube. You barely had tablatures.
Yeah.
And it was either learning by ear or a friend who was really good enough to learn the fucking song and showed you what was up.
Yes, dude. If I had a quarter for all the records I turned backwards to catch a riff or rewinding a tape just to get like 4 notes of a solo, we all did that. You had to. There was no other way. And I was trying to impress that upon him because there's probably a lot of people now. Like I go on YouTube and I see some of these kids, 10, 12, literally they're kids, and they're ripping and they're shredding. And it's just like, wow, the learning curve has been cut so short because of social media. But in the mid to late 80s,
School of Rock schools and things of that nature.
Yes, but in the mid to late 80s, no, you didn't
have any of that shit.
No, you had to learn, and I was trying to impress that upon him, which is why I guess it's easier for me to like tell him like, okay, do this, practice this, practice that. But that's because that's what I know, and I can assure you what Kirk Winstein knows, what any of these guys who are, even Sammy doing, they all know we didn't have that there because, I think they're better. Kirk's older than me. I think Sammy might be a bit older. But, I mean, we all come from that era where you had to you had to learn it.
Oh, yeah, you just had to learn. You had to practice.
You had to.
You had to put a shit ton of effort.
Yes, and with all the distractions we have nowadays, you don't need to. You can get caught up in your phone. You can get caught up...
Get caught up in your podcasting.
Everything. And we didn't have those distractions. And so I guess that with my mindset in a way, that just stuck with me. Yeah. Like very regimented, very, so and I was...
Also, I developed a bad habit. I think I mentioned this before. I developed a bad habit learning the guitar and not using my pinky.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I only play with 3 fingers.
Ever since you told me that, back at the first interview with Heraclean, I was like, no way. I was like, and then like when the first time I saw y'all live, I was like, no fucking shit. He does not use it.
Just like Chuck Schuldiner. And I've tried to get him to use his pinky. I think he actually does in one of the chords in one of the songs. I actually got him to use his pinky for the first time.
For a chord, that's the only extent I'm going to go to hitting a note with my pinky.
He can't, either he can or he does. I was like, dude, use your pinky to grab that. No, dude. Just do the 3 fingers. I'm like, okay. But it's funny because, being self-taught, to me, it was just one of those, well, I have my 4th finger. Why don't I utilize that? It's just, I guess, in the way you learn. Like, that's why I said Chuck Schuldiner, because Chuck just used 3, but it worked for him. And I guess there's some players that can do that, and to kind of get someone to break away from something they're used to doing, it's extremely difficult.
Absolutely, man.
Especially for me, I find that on bass, if I'm just sitting around noodling at home, I find myself playing patterns or playing stuff I already know how to play, and that's really not good because then I'm not challenging myself. I'm falling back on what I know. And even to break myself of that, it's difficult. It's really hard. So sometimes I'll just try and scour the internet and try and find some almost near impossible jazz-based solo, or find some from a really technical bassist and push myself on that and try and break out the comfort zone, which I've done a few times, and I did a little bit on this EP. But it's very hard when you're used to it, it's very hard to break that routine. So I get it.
So follow-up question to that, Apollo, is it more or less challenging whenever he brings some like a composition to you that you gotta learn?
With with some chords, mostly it was the chords that I'm just like, okay, all right, this is a little ridiculous, but I'll learn it for the sake of making a cool song here. And it was also a lot of times during the solos where I would get often frustrated and progressively frustrated when I'm not nailing a note, because like I said, I'm not a lead player. If I'm not nailing a note with precision and it sounds kind of sloppy and it sounds like, Kirk Hammett's drunk or something and trying to play a fucking solo, then, I get frustrated with myself. I'm like, I know I'm better than this. No, I got to practice more. This is ridiculous. This is embarrassing. And one of the videos that we have on Instagram is Jorge says Apollo going through the rigors of
learning a mimic riff, and
it's me trying to play this diminished, descending.
And I think
ascending.
Yeah, and we didn't wind up using on any of his songs, but it was an idea. But it was really cool, and he was actually getting it. And you watch the video, and then after a few minutes, he's like, kind of shakes his head, puts the guitar down.
Here's another interesting part is that a lot of times if I'm not tremolo picking, I don't like to alternate pick that much. And if it's something that's really fast, I don't alternate pick. I down pick it. I head field pick it. So when I was doing that diminished, it was.
That's right. That's what I noticed. That's right.
And I'm over here just like trying to head field through it, getting frustrated with myself because I don't.
That kind of stuff. You definitely need to alternate pick, and then there's economy picking as well, which.
What's that?
Economy picking is that's how I first started out with the guitar. Economy picking is instead of alternating where you're going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. When you go to the next string, it's down, up, down, down, up, down, down. You're crossing when you're ascending. You're crossing every string with a downstroke. When you're descending, coming back up, everything's with an upstroke. So it's like down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down. So, but it's,
I'd get confused. I'd drop my pick.
It's Tony McAlpine. That's the picking style he uses. I played like that in the beginning on guitar, but for some reason when I pick up guitar now, for whatever, I just fell into alternate picking, and it just, for me, it works better. But yeah, it's one of those things you got to work at it, which makes me appreciate guys like Yngwie and Vi and Paul Gilbert, and those people. They just. You can tell they really put their time into it. That, Al Di Meola, Steve Morse, just to get that fripp. I mean, it's nuts, man. I mean, it almost has to border on the obsessive to be that good, which is I'm just going to digress real quick. It's the same with writing. I'm a big fan of Stephen King, and one of his books, a friend of his does the preface, and says that. Like with anything, if you want to be an author, you want to be a good author, you write. And you write a lot. And you write more. And you write more.
And you write some more.
And even Stephen King said you almost have to be a glutton when it comes to words. You have to have an obsession with words and adjectives and adverb and whatever. Your pronouns or what have you.
It opens a wider spectrum for you.
Yeah, you have to be obsessive with it to be that good.
Yeah.
And that applies to anything worthwhile, especially music. When you read about guys saying, I sacrificed having a social life, or I didn't date girls, I sat in my room with the guitar. They meant it. They did, because to dedicate yourself to be that good, And I just named players who everyone knows about. Think of the players out there, who were maybe as good as the name guys, but just never got known or never got the recognition of a Vi or a Malmsteen or a Becker or whatever, maybe some guy from, Podunk, Iowa or whatever. This dude probably was like, maybe another Becker or Alex Skolnick, but we'll never know. But, I mean, we went through the same rigors of sitting there and like do. I did. I used a metronome too. I'd sit there and I'm like do. Because
it's a necessity.
It
tool for creativity.
It helps. I mean, you don't have to be dependent on it. If you don't have good rhythm, a metronome won't really help. But I like it as a suggestive tempo tool, and that's why I think technique didn't really present a problem for me, and it came to me pretty quick because I wasn't out chasing girls, because then, as like now, girls aren't interested in me at all, which is fine because it gives me time to come up with stuff on the guitar, to work on my chops, to work on songwriting, to work on my technique, because I don't have any distractions, because I can't get the time of day from them. And if any females are listening, it's no offense. I'm not denigrating women by any means.
Please don't.
No, not at all. I'm not a misogynist. I'm just saying it's I'm not a quote unquote chick magnet, but what I'm saying is it gives me time to concentrate on music, and things of that sort. There's no distractions.
Absolutely. Well, man, what's the latest happenings? What's some current events y'all want to let the people know about?
Well, I'll start. By the time the podcast airs, it'll probably be even though we've been accepting orders for pre-orders for the CD, the official release date. Tentatively, we're looking at the 23rd. And so by the time this podcast airs, the CD should be available. And on coming up right soon after that, once I get into it, we're going to do a website as well, where we're going to put the songs in there digitally, so people who maybe couldn't get a CD,
or don't have a CD player,
or don't have a CD player, or don't like to use CDs and would rather do digital. The songs will be available on the website for sale, and there'll be snippets. You can listen to the song if you like it. You can purchase the song. So we're going to go digital as well.
Cool.
And then maybe later on, Apollo and I talked about it, maybe toward the end of the year, we might go to streaming route. The only reason, unlike a lot of bands who do the streaming route when, boom, right out the starting gate, is because I guess that's considered the norm, or whatever, Spotify, iTunes, CD Baby,
Bandcamp, which is very popular. It's how a lot of these labels are looking into what is out there to finding bands. A lot of them go through Bandcamp.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just like we did, for the demo, and got in less than a year, within the span of 6-7 months. We have I think 12 on 1,300 plays. A lot of people who know, 22 followers. So, but we figured if we're going to do the streaming thing, it's going to be after we see what kind of headway we can make with the CDs and the website, because the streaming model is just so unfair to the artist. But we get that a lot of people okay, blah, 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 our new band, whatever, is streaming on all streaming outlets on Spotify and da-da-da. And then, when you realize after 100,000 plays, you get a check for maybe, say, 10 cents or $1.
Yeah.
You're like, well, but, there's been talks about trying to make the streaming platforms much more artist-friendly as far as compensation is concerned. But that hasn't come to fruition yet.
Yeah. Apollo, what you got coming up in the works, man?
Well, aside from recently finishing the stuff that we did with Mimic, I will be hitting the studio with Heraklion.
That's exciting.
Yes. Early October for the next EP, which is about time that we've brushed up on. We're working on all the minor discrepancies with the songs, so that when we go into the studio, it can be effortless and not consuming time. But also, we've I've been trying to keep a clear head, because
that's good.
It's a little nervous. We're going to nerve-wracking. We're going to Sonic Ranch in Texas, and a lot of bands like Ministry and of sorts recorded there at the Sonic Ranch. So it's a piece of history as well.
Right.
Like we're walking into a piece of history to be where these bands once stood to record.
Well, you're no stranger to that, because, I shared the experience of playing all over Florida. We were at ground zero where death metal started, in that state. So it's all good.
Yeah,
so
everyone was hype over there.
I think you're gonna do fine.
Yeah,
yeah. There was something in the water in Florida in the late '80s, early '90s, man. What came out of there?
Freaks of nature.
We could start a whole nother episode about death metal in Florida.
Florida alone,
and Florida at large, absolutely. I just want to thank Apollo for letting me come to the apartment. And dude, absolutely. I didn't get to touch on it, but Apollo is one of the best fucking cooks that I've ever had the pleasure of eating his food. He made this pasta,
really good,
with tomatoes. The spice was so nice. And thank you again. Thank you, Jorge, for allowing me to be here and to listen. Get a sneak preview of what y'all gonna offer. And I'm looking forward to the release. And I'm sure everyone else who knows y'all too are gonna they're gonna pick up what y'all putting out. So
yeah, absolutely. For sure.
We look forward to that.
Absolutely. I've already got people. Like I said, he came over by my apartment. He saw all the envelopes and the CDs and the stamps. He's like, "Well, you got it all, huh?" I said, "Yeah," and I have my separate stack for the pre-orders we've already gotten.
Cool.
So yeah, it's from what I can gather, especially going by what Facebook is throwing back at me and Instagram, a lot of people are very much looking towards it. But I kind of played it smart. What I did was I'd put little snippets up, videos of me playing bass to the new songs, but snippets in that maybe 20, 30 seconds, just to give people a little taste, and people come out, dude, that's a killer riff, so that's what just to get them tantalized, if you will, to where when it's like, hey, CDs, readily available, boom,
lubing up the deals.
Yes. Yes. Exactly like that. And thank you, Mo.
It's no problem, man. My pleasure. My pleasure. I love doing this. I love y'all guys, man. And I'm really excited to see what takes shape in the oncoming weeks of the release. So,
absolutely.
So thank y'all, and thank you everyone for listening. I appreciate it. TalesFromTheRiff.org. Check out the website. Catch us on social media. You can catch Mimic on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. Yep. As with Tales from the Riff. Join the conversation on Instagram and shoot me a DM if you want to, shoot me a demo, get on the show, whatever you want. I'm open to it. Later, y'all.
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.